Welcome to the Austin Method, where we help you develop the skills of square dancing. Square dancing as a topic is big. This program is divided into the individual videos covering the calls, and then there are the general information videos. This video is part of the general information videos. You can think of them as reference material. Don't think of them as prerequisites. Some of them are longer and you're wanting to dance, so you may not want to watch from beginning to end. If you've got time, it's well worth the watch, but if you're in a hurry, go ahead and move on to learning the calls. There are two videos I would think of as prerequisites. That's the learning and practice video. That gives you tips and tricks and helps you organize your learning. It'll give you the most efficient way to maximize your learning of the skills of square dancing. The second one, it's the site walkthrough, and it'll show you how to navigate this website, how to find the pieces and parts you may be looking for. Those two are prerequisites. Otherwise, if you want to move on to the skills of square dancing, go ahead. But if you got the time, this is some great material. If you don't, make sure you come back as you get further into it. Come back to these materials and go over them. Even if you go through them at the beginning, come back to them, because as you gain vocabulary, you will get more from it in a second viewing as you get further along. So without any further ado, let's get to the video. This is the TAM series overview. So, what are couples? Couples are two dancers. It has nothing to do with romantic couples. It has nothing to do with boy-girl, normal couples, or heterosexual couples. It has nothing to do with any of that thing like that. It's how we dance in square dancing. We dance as couples in a square of four couples. There's always a boy part and a girl part. It has nothing to do with your gender. It has everything to do with your identifier during the dance, because the caller needs to be able to tell one of you to do something while the other does something else. So we use a lot of identifiers, and there's a whole video on identifiers, but we use a lot of boy and girl, and it has nothing to do with maturity or disrespect or anything like that. It is as simple as they're both single syllables, so they fit into patter, and they fit into songs, and they fit into the calls easier. We do sometimes use bells and bows in a more advanced version of square dancing, but that has a slightly different meaning. So there's a boy part and a girl part. If you're two girls, one of you has to decide to dance boy and the other dances girl. Two boys, doesn't matter. You can switch it. You can have the gendered boy dance girl part and the gendered girl dance boy part. We often do that just to get better and experience the dancing from the other side. So at the beginning of the tip, you just have to agree who's dancing what. All right, the TAM components. In TAM, there are 4 sets with 7 segments with 3 major reviews and some sub-reviews. So this is a chart of the material. It also is the links to the material from the website. So here in the one couple material, we have the 2 sets of 3. And that's because even though this material is capable of being done by one couple, it can also be done with 2 couples. And typically, you bring your friends to learn square dancing, and you're helping your friends learn square dancing. So it's nice to have the material to be able to do it either with just you and a partner, or your partner and you and another couple. So we've actually provided the reviews in both a 1 couple and 2 couple capabilities. So that's how that material breaks out. Then there's the 2 couple material. So the 1 couple material is only 20 calls, and the 2 couple material is about 26 calls. And yet we rate them kind of close to being the same amount. And the reason for that is when you're learning the 1 couple material, you're learning a lot of overhead vocabulary. You're learning about formations and identifiers. You're learning about tips, you're learning about handholds and frame. So you're learning a lot of overhead and just getting used to it. So in terms of effort, it's a little bit different, but we'll look at that in a minute. The four-couple material is broken down again into four-couple material that you would typically do if you could get four couples together. And then the Sicilian circle and dive through is the stuff we typically do at a fun night or an open house. So there it is. TAM is progressive. You must do it in order. The fun night is optional at the beginning. By the time you get done, you have to have covered it. Otherwise, you haven't covered all the calls. So it's required by the end, and that's why it's on both ends. Typically, you'll be introduced to square dancing through a fun night or a open house or a community dance or a birthday party. And that's when you learn that Sicilian circle material. The rest of the material is for teaching you the additional, more technical skills of square dancing. So let's look at the math. So we talked about this. The one couple is about 40% of the calls. The two couples about 40% of the calls. And then the four couple and the fun night are 10% each. But in terms of effort, the one couple is 20% of the effort. It does have a lot of that overhead that I just mentioned. Because it's progressive, by the time you get to the two couple, you're trying to remember all the one couple stuff. You're trying to keep it integrated. About 50% of the effort is in the two couples stuff. So with 70% of your effort, you can learn 80%. With 90% of your effort, you can learn 90% of square dancing skills. So it just kind of gives you a feeling. People want to know typically when they'll be done or how long it'll take. This is the best we can do, is kind of giving you a sense of what's involved in terms of effort. So with the one couple, as I mentioned, everything's new. You're learning all the background, you're learning the overhead vocabulary, you're learning about identifiers and modifiers and that kind of thing. So while you're doing the one couple, highly recommend that you keep moving. Don't stop and try and perfect any particular piece. Just keep moving. Focus on getting to and through the reviews. Work through the reviews, because that's where it all comes together. That's where you're mixing all the calls. That's where the real exercise and drilling happens. And that's on both the one couple and the two couple. Two couple. Two couple is the biggest portion, as we've mentioned. You do need another couple. So there are a lot of places to get another couple. We'll look at some possibilities here. Other students. If you're in a group class, obviously you can invite another couple to come to your home and practice, or you can go to theirs, whatever, but other students. Friends and family. You can always bring in another couple of friends and family that are already learning, or bring them in to learn square dancing. The more the merrier. You'll find that as fun as it is, you'll want to bring in friends and family. If you do that, though, you want to make sure that you keep reviewing yourself while you wait for them to learn the material. It shouldn't take too long for them to catch up through the one couple, but you need to keep doing your reviews so that you stay fresh and don't forget stuff. Experienced square dancers. So sometimes you can get experienced dancers from the club that you're learning from to come help you. They'll certainly be more than willing. The other experienced square dancers, don't forget the people who invited you to square dancing. Typically, you're invited by somebody who's already square dancing. They can help you out. Notice I put experienced square dancers last. And that is because this material is pretty new. If you're reviewing this in, say, 2030, ignore what I'm about to say. But most square dancers have not had access to this level of material. They're not going to know all the things, the intricacies in here. They're not, honestly, a lot of them aren't going to be able to do the reviews and the exercises right off the bat. They'll need some walkthrough and some catching up. But most important with experienced square dancers is to be cautious not to hurt their feelings because they don't know the things that you may have been exposed to, but also be careful when taking advice when they say, oh, you can take this shortcut, or you can take that shortcut, or, oh, you don't need to know that. So, word of caution. And again, if you're waiting for somebody to catch up to you and go through the one couple so that they can be your second couple, make sure you keep practicing. There are certain formations and identifiers that can only be done once you get to two couple. You can't experience these formations or these identifiers at one couple, so there will be some new stuff for you to learn and to go back and review if you've already seen the videos on formations and identifiers. Remember, you can go back at any time and review the material, and it'll make a lot more sense the second time through, guaranteed. Four couple. So square dancing is all or nothing. You either have a square or you don't have a square. Technically, that's not quite true. There's such a thing as dancing with phantom dancers. It's very difficult. It's also very advanced, but it can be done. But typically, you need four couples and a caller for you to have a square dance. So to do the four couple stuff, if you're supplementing traditional lessons, traditional group lessons, you will get all your four couple material that you need. You've covered 80-90% of the square dance calls going through the two couple stuff. It's really not critical that you get four couples together to go through this material. Definitely review it, definitely go over it, use it to supplement your learning in group lessons. But if you're taking traditional group lessons and you can't find a place big enough, or you can't get three other couples together because of scheduling, whatever, don't worry about the four couples stuff. You've built enough strength in your skills through the two couples stuff that the four couples stuff in group lessons will come fairly easily. But if you're not, this material is here to help you. You can always, of course, form a club around this material. We did create it so that a remote Alaskan village could take up square dancing. So start a club. So if you're in an area that has a club that recognizes the Austin method, they will be more than happy and very understanding to supply a couple of couples to get you through the four couple material, because they'll understand how it works and the importance of it. If you're in a non-TAM club area that doesn't understand or recognize the Austin method, then go to them and explain to them what it is, how you've learned, what you've learned, a little explanation, and I think you can get couples there to help you complete your four couple work. On your own, you can always, you found a second couple for your two couple stuff, you can always find two more couples and bring them up behind you, help them move forward and catch up, and put together your four couples that way. If you do, remember that you and the other couple that went through the two couple stuff need to keep doing your reviews to keep your knowledge fresh and your skills honed, which is practice while you're waiting for them to come up. Four couple formations. So when you're learning at the four couple level, there are formations that can only be formed with four couples. They need four sides or 8 people or 4 couples. So there will be more material to be learned in terms of formations and identifiers. So once you've gotten through this material, it's probably good to go back and review that material as well, the formations and the identifiers, and it'll make a whole lot more sense yet again. Fun night. We've talked about fun night. Fun night is also sometimes known as open house, sometimes known as community dance, sometimes it's a birthday party. But fun night is the Sicilian Circle material. It's a lot of fun to do it in those formats. If you can find that, if you can arrange for a caller to come do a fun night for your group of 4, that's the ideal way. If you're already in group lessons, you've already learned this material and had it reinforced. What next? Well, next, after you get done through all this material, you've learned all these technical skills of square dancing. What's next is live dancing. There will be some surprises hopefully not now that we're warning you, but you should know that you've learned the skills of square dancing. You haven't learned the full experience of square dancing. So there will be a need to integrate into actual square dances. And square dancing is live entertainment, probably the cheapest form of live entertainment you'll find anywhere. So some of the things you won't be familiar with, having gone through this material, is chatter and filler between the calls. The caller will say things, he'll tell jokes, he'll fill in with helper words, he might even talk to individual dancers. Hey, Bob, turn around, Bob. And these things you have to learn to filter out. You won't be very experienced at filtering them out, learning the skills through videos that don't have that material. Cueing of the calls. So cueing of the calls is when the caller gives the call, but then he starts breaking it down and saying, okay, you need to make sure you do this, right and left through, courtesy turn your girl. Right and left through, courtesy turn is part of right and left through, but some dancers struggle to remember the courtesy turn, so the caller will tell them to courtesy turn. New or dancers that have learned their skills here will hear right and left through, courtesy turn. So they'll right and left through with their courtesy turn, and then they'll try and courtesy turn again. So one of the things you're not going to be familiar with is how to filter out the cueing of the calls. And typically they'll be given with a little bit different intonation, and it'll take a little bit of getting used to, not a lot, but it's something that will be new to you having learned your skills through here. Different voices, accents, and calling styles. Obviously, we have a limited number of callers presenting this material, and those are the voices you'll be used to. So when you hear a woman caller for the first time, you might struggle. When you hear a Japanese caller for the first time, I guarantee if you're not Japanese, you'll struggle, because it's a skill of vocabulary, and you need to hear things correctly, and that can be challenging. Customs and courtesies. We've tried to give a list to customs and courtesies, but some of those are also regional. How you thank your square, how the squares form up. There are different things that we're not going to think of that some places practice and others don't, but there are certain customs and courtesies that you may not be aware of because we haven't covered them, but something you should know. The echoing or the hall acoustics. So you've had it pretty good here. You've had whatever speaker system you've been able to put together. It might be great. It might be not so great. If it's not so great, you might actually not have any trouble with hall acoustics. But some halls are echoey, some halls the sound doesn't bounce quite right. The caller does the best they can to make the sound as good as they can, but if you're in a gymnasium, there's only so much you can do. The dancers sometimes have to get used to that, so it's something you won't necessarily be used to. Singing calls. So singing calls are typically easy because they circulate through the same basic set of calls through the different verses and choruses, but you're not going to be used to them. There's going to be like, what's this? But singing calls are a lot of fun, and they just, will require a little getting used to. Not a big deal. Alternate phrasing. So we've tried to give you multiple phrasings to the different calls, but we're not going to give you everything, and sometimes the callers make things up. They'll say things like, the cute ones do this, and they're talking about the girls, or they'll say the young ones do this, and it doesn't matter, but they'll do weird things with their phrasing and with their wording, and you're not going to be familiar with that. It takes a little getting used to, but as long as you're aware, you'll get used to it. SSD and non-SSD. So this system, the Austin method, was based on a program level the square dancing community doesn't like to call them levels, but to anybody looking from the outside, they look a lot like levels. There are multiple levels in square dancing. There's SSD, which is 50 calls. There's mainstream, which is about 70 calls. There's plus, which is about 100 calls, and all these are progressive. So plus the 100 calls is the 70 of mainstream plus another 30, thus plus. And then there's advanced, which jumps up to 200 calls. And then after advanced, there's C1, 2, 3, and 4, which you don't even want to know how many calls are there. The reason we mention SSD and non-SSD is in the what next category is because if you go to a dance that's not SSD and is based on 70 calls and you know only 50 calls, it's important that you know what you're dancing to and that you know that you're dancing at an SSD club. These other levels, namely mainstream, is still available. SSD is growing very, very fast. And if you're in an SSD area, you can pretty much quit listening to me on this. But if you're in a non-SSD area, you got to make a choice. Are you going to travel to an SSD area, or are you going to learn mainstream? Or plus. Some areas go all the way from beginner to plus. So they go from 0 to 100 instead of 0 to 70. So we're teaching you 0 to 50. There are mainstream, which is 70, and then there are areas that go straight to plus. And if you're in one of those areas, you need to know that there's going to be some more learning to do. But go to one of these clubs, let them know what you know and how well you know it, and they will work to get you those additional calls and the additional training you need to do. But it's important that you know what you've got. We're not trying to hide anything. So you have to be willing to learn more. All right, so if you're in a non-SSD area and you've put together a square to do your 4-couple stuff, why not form a club? We're actually going to do a video on that. Stay tuned. We haven't done it yet, but it is not beyond the realm of possibility. It's easier than you think. Thank you for visiting the Austin Method. We hope to see you on the dance floor soon.